So very welcome to ECME's webinar series of Rainbow Children's Hospital, Vijayawada. And thanks for the active participation of all the pediatricians. In the past 2 months, we have been doing actively and will continue to like this from support from your end. So today we have extremely talented speakers, young speakers who are both are pulmonologists. One is Dr. Suresh Natarajan from Chennai Rainbow Children's Hospital. Suresh has done his DNB Pediatrics from Kanchi Kamkoti Hospital. Then he has done his Pediatric Pulmonology PhD from MGM Hospital, and he has done his MRCPCH, and he has done his fellowship in asthma and allergy from CMC Vellore. Extremely talented, and those last year he has come to Vijayawada also. So along with a Chennai team for his presentation in Vijayawada also. So he's a very senior pediatrician at Rainbow Hospital, Chennai. Welcome, Dr. Suresh. He will be delivering his lecture on acute cough in children, especially a case-based approach. And second speaker, we have Dr. Raghuvamshi. Raghu, are you there? Yeah, second speaker, we have Dr. Raghuvamshi, another youngster, very young pediatric pulmonologist. He is already in Rainbow Children's Hospital, Vijayawada. He has done his pediatric critical care fellowship from Apollo Children's Hospital, Apollo Hospital, Chennai, and also he went to Australia for his pediatric critical care and pulmonology fellowships. And he has been doing his active pediatric critical care specialist and pulmonologist now at Rainbow Children's Hospital, Vijayawada. So both these two have very vast experience in managing this cough, acute, and Raghu will be speaking on chronic cough. So now it's already time. Now over to Suresh for your presentation, management of acute cough in children, a case-based approach. Go ahead, Suresh.
So good evening, one and all. I'm Dr. Suresh Natarajan, Senior Consultant Pediatrician from Rainbow Children's Hospital, Chennai. At the outset, I congratulate the team Rainbow Vijayawada for organizing such a wonderful webinar tonight. I also extend my sincere thanks to the Rainbow team, in particularly Dr. Ram Prasad, for giving us a good introduction and also for giving me this opportunity. So coming to the topic today, it is acute cough in children, a case-based approach. You all agree with me that cough is not in a child, not only disturbs a child, but also disturbs the entire family. And because of the reason, and cough is the most frequent symptom which we see in our day-to-day practice. We pediatricians are all very clear that cough is a protective reflex, and we also know that sometimes children without illness also have few episodes of cough. Even studies have identified that even a normal child, even without any illness, can have even up to 11 times of cough per day. But parents are always worried about cough, and they are not bothered about the etiology, they are worried about the cough. So from the pediatrician's point of view, what is important is the etiology of cough, what we see in pediatric practice is quite different from what the adult physician sees. And hence we need to have a systematic approach to deal with any child presenting with cough. Today, as Dr. Ram Prasad told, we are going to have two sessions here. The first session, we are going to talk about the acute cough and the subacute cough, which I am going to deal. And the subsequent one is chronic cough, which will be dealt by Dr. Raghuvamshi. So what is cough? We all know cough. Cough is nothing but a body's natural reflex, which helps us to clear the airways of the irritants and thereby prevents the infection. It may be of three types. This is the point I want everybody to note it down. Acute cough is cough up to 3 weeks. And subacute cough is between 3 weeks to 8 weeks. And chronic cough is more than 8 weeks. Now in the first half of the discussion by me, I'll be going to cover the predominant, the important case-based discussions regarding with reference to the acute cough and subacute cough. So let's start with the first case scenario. So here we have a 12-year-old adolescent boy who's presenting to us with an acute cough of 2 weeks duration. The child suffers from a continuous dry cough, which is a loud barking cough. What happens is last 2 weeks, he goes to bed around 10 o'clock. So 8 o'clock, he starts getting his cough, and which is a continuous dry cough and lasts approximately for 2 hours. You see the cough. Okay, so similarly, the cough is continuously happening for nearly for 2 hours, almost all the days, and subsequently he goes for sleep and his sleep is not disturbed. In the morning, he coughs occasionally till 12 o'clock, and from 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock, again no cough. So this is the presentation. The child had no fever, no rhinorrhea, no other upper respiratory symptoms, no history of any breathlessness, no history of wheeze. So clinical examination wise, is essentially normal. For the above complaints, the practicing pediatrician already evaluated the child. He did the blood counts, chest X-ray, both are normal. Because of the cough persisting like that, so he has did for Mantoux test also, which is negative. Yes, the COVID very much we are worried can present in any way. COVID tested twice in this child was negative. Because of parental anxiety, it was tested twice, it is negative. So this is the basic history and examination and investigations. He was treated with 2 to 3 cough syrups already they tried in sufficient duration. No response. So they have given Levolin, Rotacaps, and inhalers also tried. Because of possibility of any atypical infection, considering the adolescent age group, he was also treated with azithromycin. No response. A trial of oral steroids also was given. No response. So the practicing pediatrician there got fed up. So he want to have a second opinion. So he referred the child for a second opinion. So this is a child. I am putting the video again one more to see. You see this cough. We have admitted the child. This is the cough we have documented here. So what are we dealing with? We have an adolescent boy. Here he presents us only cough. It is an isolated cough, no upper respiratory symptoms, no lower respiratory symptoms. Cough starts before going to sleep and no cough throughout the night. No cough throughout the night. This is a very important point I want to highlight. And it is refractory to treatment. Any treatment we have tried, it is not responding. This is the symptom. The child came to our hospital. The possible differential diagnosis we consider at this point of time is habit cough. The second differential diagnosis is a cough variant asthma. Why habit cough? We thought is habit cough is something which is characteristically the sleep in the night is not disturbed. It is only the problem happens in the daytime. So we admitted a child and observed and evaluated. We did a total IgE, which is normal. We did a lung function test spirometry. Is FE1 is normal, FE1 by FE's ratio is normal. Bronchodilator reversibility, nothing is there, none is there. So lung function test is basically normal. We did this FeNO, look for any eosinophilic airway inflammation. FeNO is normal. Echo also done to satisfy the parents, it is normal. So finally, we came clinically as a diagnosis of habit cough. Then we sit with the parents. We spoke to got the history. There is some conflict in attending the online classes. That is the only history they are giving to us. So finally, we had a detailed counseling with the child. And after adequate counseling, we taught him some breathing exercises. So with all these things, regular counseling, within a 48 hours span, the cough totally subsided without any treatment. So the first case, what we have discussed is habit cough. The habit cough is a psychogenic cough, also known as somatic cough syndrome, also known as tick cough. Habit cough is a repetitive cough that occurs in the absence of any underlying disease. It is often seen in adolescent children, as in our case. Typically, the cough which you hear is a harsh barking cough and non-protective cough. And characteristically, it disappears during the sleep. This is a very characteristic finding. And children with habit cough are often misdiagnosed and treated as asthma. It is a diagnosis of exclusion. So we have to rule out do a good history, good clinical examination, and basic evaluation to make sure we are not missing anything else. So once we ruled out all the common things, then the diagnosis of habit cough is made. Here, the cough is a refractory cough, but the treatment is not cough syrup, not antibiotic. The treatment is only counseling. We'll move on to the next case scenario. Here we have a 1-year-old girl baby presented with severe cough for 14 days duration, 2 weeks duration. So it is an acute cough. Here also the cough is dry cough, occurs in bouts, associated with vomiting. Following the cough bouts, the child gets vomiting, and it is gradually increasing for the last 2 weeks. There is no history of fever, no history of rhinorrhea, no history of breathlessness, no history of gastroenteritis. In the family, the elder sibling, also the mother, also have similar type of cough for the last 1 month. So clinical examination is essentially normal for this child. The child was evaluated locally with blood counts, a chest X-ray, blood counts for a high counts, otherwise chest X-ray is normal. So this child already tried with adequate cough syrups, bronchodilators, orally, nebulization also, they have tried inhalers, steroids also they have given. They have admitted the child, given IV augmentin, but no response. So the child was referred for further evaluation. So what are we dealing with this case scenario? Here we have an infant presenting with cough for 2 weeks, which is progressively worsening, which occurs in paroxysms in bouts, but there is no history of any lower respiratory symptoms, no breathlessness, nothing, and other family members are also affected. Investigations reveals absolute lymphocytosis. So if you see here, total count is high, lymphocyte is 90%. So child has absolute lymphocytosis and refractory to treatment. So what are we dealing with? With this history and laboratory reports, we thought two possibilities in our mind. One is pertussis. This is because an infant age group presenting with paroxysmal bouts of cough and absolute lymphocytosis. The second possibility is viral illness. Yes, viral illness also can present with absolute lymphocytosis. Other family members may be affected. So these two possibilities is there. We went ahead and sent nasopharyngeal aspirate for PCR for pertussis. The result came positive for Bordetella pertussis. Yes, we are dealing with a child with pertussis. So what is pertussis? A few points to have a clinical significance. Pertussis is a clinical diagnosis. The child should have cough as a criteria. Any child, when you are going to diagnose a pertussis, cough should be there for at least 2 weeks. In addition to the cough, the child should have at least one of the following 4 parameters. The child should have either a paroxysmal coughing, the child either should have a inspiratory whoop, or the cough should be associated by a post-tussive vomiting, or the cough may be associated with an apnea or cyanosis. So cough with at least one of these findings is there, you can very well clinically suspect pertussis. So clinically, pertussis goes in 3 phases. First is the catarrhal phase, which occurs for 1 to 2 weeks. Then the paroxysmal phase, which can last from 1 to 6 weeks. Here the child presents to us with the paroxysmal phase with the paroxysmal bouts of cough. Subsequently, the convalescent phase, which lasts even for weeks to months. This is what the reason the child presenting with pertussis are often tend to have 100-day cough. The pertussis are often called as 100-day cough. So laboratory wise, though we did the PCR, laboratory testing is not mandatory to confirm the diagnosis. If somebody wants to confirm the diagnosis and a clinically suspected child, it's always better to go for PCR, which is a very reliable test. It has a sensitivity of around 60 to 90% and has a specificity of 90%. Culture, though gold standard, the feasibility is not available in many settings. It is a research-oriented test. And serology-wise, which has a good sensitivity, can also confirm in a limited age group, where we are looking for anti-pertussis toxin IgG titer more than 100 interaction units per ml. So generally, we see a lot of children presenting at the age of 1 year with bouts of cough without fever. So very much like this case. Many times we are clinically confused whether it is a pertussis or viral infection. This is a study published by Nevis DJ et al. In the year 2011, where they have studied the clinical profile of children with pertussis over the viral infection. If you could see here, paroxysmal cough occurs more commonly in pertussis. Post-tussive vomiting occurs more commonly in pertussis over viral infections. And the absence of fever, prolonged cough. Suppose you see the average duration of cough in a child with viral illness around 3.5. The average duration of cough in a pertussis group is around 11 days. So prolonged cough, absence of fever, and cyanosis, if it is present, it favors always pertussis. Investigations wise, though leukocytosis and absolute lymphocytosis can seen in both, it is seen in higher proportion at a higher level in children with pertussis over viral infection. This slide makes us to understand how we can diagnose pertussis and differentiate clinically over the other respiratory viral infections. So how will you manage a child with pertussis? The management of choice is a macrolide. However, the second line of choice is Septron, that is trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole combination, can be used in infants more than 2 months of age. The ideal drug of choice is macrolide. In our child age group is 1 to 5 months. So we have less than 1 year, so we have used azithromycin in this dose recommendation. Not only treating the child is very important, the very important is you have to identify and treat all the close contact members with the same dosage of macrolide. So treatment of the child, treatment of the close contacts, and the management doesn't stop there. We should give pertussis vaccination, that is either DPT or TDAP or DTAP based on the age group. The vaccination should be recommended in all the contact groups. A point I want here to highlight is bronchodilators, corticosteroids, antihistamines, antitussives have not proven to be beneficial in patients with pertussis. Though you try everything, usually you may not be successful. Only macrolide can help. Risk of these therapies usually outweigh the benefits, particularly when you use opioid cough suppressants, which may have an adverse effect on the respiration. So the second case is pertussis presenting with a refractory cough. We have tried with cough syrups. Cough syrups has not helped. Only treatment which helped is an antibiotic because it is a bacterial infection. Now we move on to the next case scenario 3. Here we have an 8-year-old boy who presented very similar to the first case with an isolated cough, only cough for 3 weeks. Here also the cough is dry cough. It occurs in the night and in the early morning. So the previous child, what we have seen is the cough occurred minimally in the daytime, and it started in the just before he is going to bed and disappears in the bedtime. Here we have a cough which happens mainly only in the night, not in the morning, in reverse, only in the night and in the early morning. This is a common presentation. We encounter a lot of patients in our OP practice. There is only cough, no rhinorrhea, no nose block, no fever, no breathlessness. Clinically on examination, the child is essentially normal. Our upper respiratory examination, lower respiratory examination, general examination, everything is fine. No wheeze and auscultation. The parent gives a history of similar episodes in the last month. That last month also child had similar episodes which happened, nocturnal cough in the night and early morning cough, but that time they have given nebulization with the levosalbutamol. Child improved after giving 3 days of nebulization. Again the symptoms recurred, and father being an asthmatic, the child responding to bronchodilator nebulizations, it made the parents to have a concern and they want to know whether it is an asthma or not. So this child was evaluated, investigations, everything is normal, total count is 10,000, polymorph predominance, Mantoux is negative, and PFR is normal. So the child was tried with cough syrups, no improvement. They thought possibility of functional, whether the child is trying to bluff us, so referred for opinion. So we suspected cough variant asthma in this child. This is because you see the cough which happens only in the night and in the early morning, and it responds to bronchodilator. If you see the previous child, previous first case, adolescent boy who also presented with cough, the cough disappears totally in the night. That is for when you think of habitual cough, and not respond to nebulizations at all. So we thought of cough variant asthma. We admitted child and we evaluated the child. Total IG is elevated here, and we did the spirometry. His FEV1 is normal. FEV1 is normal, but very important is we have documented bronchodilator reversibility. After giving the bronchodilator reversibility, there is a 12% increase in the FEV1, which is suggestive a good favoring thing for cough variant asthma. And we also did a FeNO for the child. The FeNO is very much elevated. Normally, if we document more than 30, it is suggestive of a significant eosinophilic inflammation. To this child, the cough is because of the eosinophilic inflammation, and the child has bronchodilator reversibility, so it fits into the diagnosis of cough variant asthma. So cough variant asthma, we told the parent, looks like cough variant asthma. So the father is asking now, what is the reason for this cough variant cough? You tell me the reason and how to avoid. So we went ahead and did the allergy skin test. So I'm a pediatric allergist. We do a lot of skin tests for children with recurrent wheezing, asthma, eczemas. Here the child has a recurrent cough, suggestive of cough variant asthma. We did the skin test. Skin test, this is saline. The first one is saline. The second was histamine. This is a negative control. This is a positive control. The third one is a dust mite. The fourth one is a dust mite. Fifth one is a dust mite. Sixth one is a dust mite. We checked for other allergens. Other allergens are negative. I could see a positivity with the third and fourth dust mites. So the child has house dust mite allergen sensitization. The allergen responsible for his nocturnal cough is house dust mite. So what we have suggested them is to go for house dust mite avoidance. So what is house dust mite avoidance? Basically, whenever we talk about house dust mite, the concept which the people understand is it is dust allergy. Dust allergy is a a wrong terminology. Actually, it is a dust mite allergy. Basically, the dust mites are live organisms, which are microscopic organisms, are seen in our bed, pillows, bed sheets, and carpets and sofas. So dust mites are there in your bed, and you sleep over the bed. Dust mite comes, irritates the respiratory tract, makes the area inflamed. When on exposure to the cool air or change in environment, or because of any irritants, you'll get a cough. So here we have a lot of allergen avoidance. I told about go for allergen avoidance. Allergen avoidance is by putting a pillow cover and bed cover. There are a lot of things are available in the Google and in the Amazon. It comes in any one of the 4 products. Among these, the only recommended one is the oven microfiber fabric. The oven microfiber fabric, the advantage is it allows the ventilation of air to move in and out, but the dust mites in the bed cannot reach the patient. So we went ahead and used the dust mite avoidance. The child's cough became better, and this child is fine. The very important point I want to highlight is a child with cough and asthma who do dust mite, you start avoiding the dust mite, child will become all right. But unless you do immunotherapy for the child again will end up after some time with the recurrent wheeze or asthma. So what is cough variant asthma? When we suspect cough variant asthma should be suspected whenever a child presents with a non-protective cough lasting for more than 8 weeks. See, actually, when you have to suspect, you require 8 weeks. That is, it goes almost to subacute cough. Here we suspected early because of other collaborative features. The child should have a dry cough for at least 8 weeks, no upper respiratory symptoms, no lower respiratory symptoms, no wheeze clinically, chest X-ray is normal, spirometry wise baseline is normal, but bronchial hyperresponsiveness is there. FeNO, if you do, it may be elevated, and relief of cough is characteristically seen with bronchodilator therapy as in our case. So our child, this case presented here to highlight, child with cough variant asthma can present with disturbing acute cough or subacute cough. You leave, it can come into chronic cough territory also. And your lung function test and FeNO and skin test will help you to come to the diagnosis and go for avoidance of the trigger, which will invariably help in the management. Coming to the case scenario 4. Here we have a 4-year-old male child, is previously well, presented with recurrent episodes of cough for the 4 weeks. So he was having a lot of cough only for the post 4 weeks. Prior to 4 weeks, he is previously well. Initially, the child was treated with OP management, no response, given some cough syrups, no response. Then he was admitted, required nebulization, so showing partial response to the nebulization, and he was discharged with budesonide inhalers. After coming home, again the cough worsened. He was readmitted for the second time also. Again with the nebulizations and antibiotics, he became a little better. And again he was discharged. He's discharged with MDA 125. But again after going home, with inhalers, despite his complaints being good, and there is no improvement in the cough is worsened. So last 1 month, the child is suffering from chronic cough, almost cough. This is an acute cough, sorry. So the treating doctor already evaluated the child sufficiently. He did an X-ray which showed a bilateral hyperinflation, maybe suggestive of an asthma, and ECG echo is normal. There was no contact with tuberculosis. Manto test done as negative, and there is no family history of asthma. Child was referred for asthma and possibility of asthma. The child was referred. So if you go closely in this child, what are all the abnormal things we see here? This child is previously well, a difficult to control asthma, okay, and there is no family history of asthma. So in such a case, asthma is less likely. So when will you suspect asthma? Asthma, you suspect child should have a recurrent episodes of wheeze and good response to asthma medications, and there is a family history. Here, in contrary to these things, the wheeze is only of recent onset. Till 1 month back, child is perfectly fine, no problem. And you treat the wheeze with bronchodilators, response is only partial and it is refractory to treatment. And there is no risk factors, no atopy in the child, no atopic history in the family also. So what are we dealing with? This is not an asthma. Most probably we are dealing with an asthma mimic. Because this involves a lower airway problem, we went ahead and did the bronchoscopy for this child. So this is the bronchoscopy for the child. If you see here, the bronchoscopy, you see the right and left bronchus. There is a nut is there blocking the right bronchus. So, but this child X-ray showed bilateral hyperinflation. We are not able to explain this. Again, we are going to the opposite side. If you could see closely, we are also see one more nut in this side. So this child had a bilateral block of airway, which caused the bilateral hyperinflation. Because of this, the foreign body is missed. Subsequently, when we gone to the history and we have asked the parents what happened to the child, the parents are giving a history. This cough started with a choking episode when the child was taking a nut. So the history is very important. In this child, the onset of cough, is it abrupt and associated with choking episode? If that history we have got, most probably the diagnosis can be made little early. But it is always not possible to get a history sometimes, and foreign body should be always suspected when a child has chronic cough, especially when you see a collapse and in the X-ray. In this child, it is little rare to see a bilateral foreign body obstructing the bilateral bronchus. Rare to see. So we'll move on to the next case scenario. So the point I want to highlight with this case scenario is not all the children who are presenting with wheeze is bronchial asthma. Asthma mimic should be always considered when the history is atypical. Coming to the fifth case scenario, here we have a 8-month-old boy presented with the previously well, born by term, birth weight was 3 kg, apparently well till 3 days back. Developed rhinorrhea and fever, both of which lasted for only 2 days. Subsequently, cough started. Cough is there for the last 5 days and disturbs the child, not improved with cough syrups. So this is the history. The child on examination is a well baby, thriving well, gained almost 8 kgs in 8 months itself. Heart rate is normal, respiratory rate is increased, there is tachypnea, subcostal interactions are there, saturation is on 90%, child is hypoxic. So we have a 8-month-old term baby, previously well, developed a upper respiratory symptom with a fever, subsequently cough and lower respiratory involvement. This child tried cough syrup and bronchodilator, no relief. The child was sent for an opinion. So what is the option in this child? Will you go for oral bronchodilator therapy or a nebulization? Will you go for a steroid? Will you add an antibiotic? Will you add an antihistamine for the cough? Will you add a cough syrup or will you add a Montelukast? So the problem what we have is, it is a first episode of lower respiratory infection and presenting as wheeze. The diagnosis is bronchiolitis. Bronchiolitis, cough is the only worrisome for the parents. But for the treating doctor, tachypnea is the worrisome for the doctor. So respiratory syncytial virus is the commonest cause of bronchiolitis. We have facilities to do RSV nasopharyngeal aspirate. Other viruses or group of viruses such as rhinoviruses, parainfluenza viruses, influenza virus can also cause bronchiolitis. The treatment of RSV bronchiolitis is only oxygen and fluids. Bronchodilators are not routinely recommended. Corticosteroids, no evidence, and leukotriene modifiers, Montelukast also not indicated. So whenever you deal a child with bronchiolitis, the treatment is only high flow nasal cannula, especially the child is hypoxic. This child, once you started the nasal flow, high flow nasal cannula therapy, the child's cough got better. We are not given any cough syrups, child improved well. So in this child, cough is not improved with only oxygen therapy. Coming to case scenario 6, here we have a 5-month-old baby delivered at 33 weeks, born with a birth weight of 1.2 kg. The child presented with child was well till 2 weeks back, presented with cough and fast breathing and fever for 2 days, and then fever settled. The fast breathing was gradually increasing and child was becoming hypoxic. So we have a baby, a 5-month-old baby presented to us with cough and fast breathing for 2 weeks. The X-ray taken, X-ray shows bilateral hyperinflation and little collapse. I'll show you the X-ray. Diagnosed as severe pneumonia. Child was started with ceftriaxone. After 48 hours of antibiotic also, the child shows no improvement. And this is the baby. Baby, you see the 5-month-old baby. Baby is weighing only 4.1 kg. And baby is tachypnic, respiratory distress present, hypoxic, requiring 4 liters oxygen. On examination, child has a liver and spleen. Liver is palpable 2 centimeters and spleen is just palpable. So this is the X-ray. We have seen little area of collapse. Otherwise, X-ray looks fine. So what are we dealing with? Here we have a child, an infant presenting with lower respiratory infection of acute onset. A failure to thrive is there and a hepatitis splenomegaly. Considering all these things, the possible differential diagnosis one could think is this child with a lower respiratory symptom in a season like now, respiratory syncytial virus, or a atypical infection such as chlamydia or mycoplasma, or a swine flu, COVID, yes, possible, can present like this. Immunodeficiency, considering the failure to thrive and low respiratory infection. Sometimes tuberculosis in our scenario can present like this. We went ahead and investigated. This child's hemoglobin is little low. Otherwise, the blood count is fairly normal. Manned AFB gastric juice done is negative. HIV is negative, RSV, COVID, and H1N1 done is negative. Ultrasound abdomen done only showed hepatosplenomegaly, echo done is normal. So this child was treated with oxygen, thinking of possibility of atypical infection. Azithromycin was given, and nebulizer was given. However, there was no improvement. The child continued to have hypoxic. So what to do now? So here we have an infant who was presenting with LRI, failure to thrive, hepatosplenomegaly, and hypoxic, not treated with antibiotics, with nebulization, child is not showing improvement. So to look for further etiology, anything, we just went ahead and did the CT. CT is showing multifocal areas of collapse and consolidation. So what to do next? So if you see this case, a very important history is missed in this case. So what is the important things we have missed? The very important thing is the onset of problem. So similar to the case which I have discussed for foreign body, where the onset of cough is abrupt. If the history is there, we can diagnose foreign body. Here also, what is the history? Where all this problem started? If you could go back in this case, the problems those started with cough and fast breathing for the 2 weeks. If you go and see, the baby was delivered at 33 weeks itself, and the birth weight is 1.2 kg. So the problem started in utero itself. A baby born IUGR, subsequently failure to thrive is there, presenting with LRI, the possibility of intrauterine infection should be considered. The intrauterine infection, which can very well present like this, is CMV. So we went ahead and did CMV, IgM, CMV PCR. The quantitative copies are very significant. The diagnosis is CMV pneumonitis. This child immunodeficiency workup was done. It is negative. We started valve encapsulation for the child. Child became off oxygen within a week. So we have discussed a child with pertussis where antibiotic was helpful in improving the cough. We have discussed a child with CMV pneumonitis where antiviral is helpful. We have discussed a child with foreign body where foreign body removal is helping us to make the cough better. We have discussed a child with house dust mite avoidance presenting as cough variant asthma where avoidance of dust mites. Here are all, if you could see, cough syrup doesn't have a role. So what is the lesson learned in this case? A complete history here with focus of the onset of illness and a detailed physical examination with focus on the findings such as failure to thrive and hepatosplenomegaly will help us to arrive the diagnosis, especially in difficult pneumonia cases. Coming to case scenario 6, here we have a baby boy or 10-year-old boy presenting who was previously well, presenting with cough, fever, and breathlessness of 2 weeks duration. A X-ray was taken. It shows light lower lobe consolidation. He was treated with ceftriaxone, admitted as he was hypoxic. No response, fever, cough, and breathlessness persisted. Possibility of resistant infection was considered. Antibiotics were escalated to ceftriaxone and vancomycin. Despite that, the fever continued to persist. So what to do? So he was evaluated. His manto is negative. Blood counts is normal. AFB smear is negative. Mycoplasma IgM is negative. So what to do next? So the fever is persisting despite escalating the antibiotic. The point I want to highlight is, if you are suspecting tuberculosis in a child with pneumonia, doing a manto test and an AFB gastric juice smear will only partly rule out your diagnosis. If you want to completely rule out your diagnosis, go ahead and do a complete panel. That is, gene expert is a must, as well as AFB culture is also a must. So in this child, we went ahead and did the gene expert. Gene expert is positive for mycotuberculosis, and we sent the culture grown the tuberculosis bacteria. So we started ATT treatment. With this, the child became all right, and his fever settled, cough settled, and breathlessness settled. Not only antibiotics, antivirals, anti-tuberculosis treatment also can improve the cough if it is because of tuberculosis. So I want to sum up by saying like this: majority of the children presenting with acute cough has viral upper respiratory infection. I have not discussed the viral upper respiratory infection, but the absence of fever, absence of tachypnea, and absence of chest signs in a child presenting with acute cough for approximately 2 weeks should alert a person, and you should always make every attempt to arrive at diagnosis. You should focus and look for the varied presentation of the cough, look for the red flags, and you should have an approach. These 3 things I'm going to discuss briefly. Acute cough can have any of these 3 presentations. If you could see the 4 weeks cough, I told cough is 3 weeks. Subacute can go up to 8 weeks. So the cough, when it starts initially, it may be an acute cough with a delayed recovery. In a viral infection, sometimes the cough starts and progress slowly and may recover even in a time of 4 weeks. whatever cough syrups you give, it may not respond. It takes its own sweet time and will become all right. Sometimes the cough can be an acute recurrent cough. See, cough comes for 2-3 days, it will become all right. Again, the cough comes 2-3 days, it will become all right. Here comes the allergic cough, atopic cough, or cough variant asthma. All these things you should keep in mind. Sometimes the chronic cough, which is going to happen after 8 weeks, can also start as an acute cough. So you cannot, no need to wait for 8 weeks to diagnose chronic cough. If you have a high suspicion, you can evaluate the child very early also, and you can diagnose the causes related to the chronic. So always when you see a child presenting with chronic cough or subacute cough or an acute cough, look for the pattern of cough which the child is presenting as for the onset and for the progression. So what are the red flags which one should always focus? The cough which has its onset in the neonatal period and cough during feeding, a sudden onset of cough, cough associated with findings such as shortness of breath, hypoxemia, cyanosis, rapid breathing, stridor, weight loss, hemoptysis, and cough which is chronic associated with chest wall deformity, digital clubbing, failure to thrive, always an abnormal cough. One should always spend some time in evaluating a child in detail, go for a systematic approach. And whenever there is a parental concern, even you feel everything is normal, always look for any abnormal diagnosis. And sometimes the clinician instinct is very important. So final slide is how to approach a child with acute cough. So whenever you see a child with acute cough, the first point you have to say is it associated with coryza and fever? Whenever coryza and fever is there in a child presenting with cough of less than 3 weeks duration, it is usually because of a respiratory infection. The respiratory infection, if it is associated with only upper respiratory symptoms, it may be an ordinary cold, or sometimes croup if there is associated stridor is there. If the respiratory infection is associated with lower respiratory symptoms in the form of tachypnea or wheeze or a high fever in the form of pneumonia, the possibility is bronchiolitis, asthma, or pneumonia. Coming to the second category, there is no coryza or cough, but the cough is of acute onset and associated with choking episode. One should think of inhaled foreign body and consider doing a bronchoscopy. And similarly, if there is no acute onset episode and no coryza or fever, and the cough comes recurrently, especially associated with other atopic situations such as wheezing, allergic salute, allergic conjunctivitis, eczema, and family history is there, one should think of always seasonal cough or cough variant asthma in this child. And I always remember, a chronic cough can present initially as only as an acute cough. If you miss in the acute phase, then only it go for chronic cough. So the take home message is, cough in children can be distressing not only to the child, to the caregivers, and to the entire family. Always when you see a child presenting with a difficult cough, try to classify the child cough as an acute or subacute or chronic. Analyze the history in depth. As the onset, progression, look for any specific character, whether it is occurring in paroxysms. All this history should be obtained. Focus on your examination for red flags, investigations relevantly if only necessary, and follow a rational approach which will cleanse the diagnosis and make you a successful practitioner. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a great presentation, Dr. Suresh. Excellent presentation. Okay, very crisp and clear. So we'll take the rough questions are there. We'll take at the end. Now I request Dr. Raghu Vamshi to take over approach the chronic cough. Over to you, Raghu.
It was really good presentation, Suresh. It was like you had done 90% of my work. So I have, after seeing your presentation, I think I had nothing to present, but I'll try my best to present some of the rarest cases which we can see. Like just a few minutes to bring up my slides here. Okay. Okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes, Raghu. Yes.
Fine. Thank you. Okay. So as Suresh said, we have acute cough, subacute cough, and chronic cough. I thought I will talk about more on chronic cough, but it's a lot of overlap in cough because as Suresh said, most of the coughs will start as acute cough, but they progress to chronic cough, right? So as Suresh said, it's a protective reflex, and most common reasons for the hospital visits and repeat visits. If you're a pediatrician and you see if your normal clinic has some newborn who come for vaccination, and the next most common presentation is for cough. And if the patient is back to you repeated, so it may be because acute cough, which is having recurrent acute cough, or it can be a chronic cough. So it causes more, as Suresh said, more parental anxiety and stress. Even for doctors, it is a lot of stress. And it is one of the most common cause, disease, which were the over-the-counter medications. Like parents, you prescribe medications which may not work. Parents themselves try different medications. They go to different doctors and try different medications, and none of the medications work. And most of the medications which are given for the kids for cough, which all contain phenylephrine, chlorpheniramine maleate, the doses what they are given, if given along with the paracetamol, the phenylephrine dose actually doubles. It prevents the reverse metabolism of phenylephrine, and the dose doubles, and they have hypertension. And if you see in CDC data, they have given black box warning in like FDA, and nearly there are 8 to 10 kids they have investigated an autopsy and their blood samples, and most of the kids who had died, the 8 kids, they all had pseudoephedrine or phenylephrine in their blood system, and they're all attributed to probably this over-the-counter given drugs. And they had seen, what they have seen is most of the parents who were illiterate or uneducated, they overdose their children, and probably this phenylephrine of pseudoephedrine with chlorpheniramine maleate has caused their death. So we should be very careful before prescribing any over-the-counter medication, and also tell the parents not to take this medication on their own when the cough is lasting for longer days. They keep on giving the same medication thinking something will work, but nothing will work for them unless you evaluate further. So cough is a protective reflex. It has 3 phases: inspiratory phase when you take a deep breath, a forced expiratory phase against the closed glottis, compressive phase, and then opening the glottis, and rapid expiratory flow. That's like expulsive phase. So cough is trying to, there's something stuck in your airways, something which is bad, and you're trying your best to bring this bad thing out. So that is how actually the cough is present, and we don't need to suppress the cough, because cough is there because it's trying to protect you, and suppressing cough is not the answer. If you see in today's presentation, he has never mentioned any cough suppressant. All his presentation and discussion is about identifying the cause for the cough, but not treating the cough. So you should identify the cough and treat the cause for the cough, but not the cough, because suppressing the cough is a bad thing to be done. Okay, so before you treat a cough, you should understand something like a cough arc. So there are stimulus which are present, which can receptors basically which are present from the nostril right from to the alveoli. When they are stimulated, the trachea, bronchial, the afferent nerves, the vagus nerve, it goes to medulla oblongata, it comes to the laryngeal nerves, and you start coughing. This cough receptors even present in the stomach, in a gastric also. So there will be multiple causes for the cough reflex, but like smoking, exposure to dust, there can be an asthma, can be any foreign body sensation. So because cough is such a very anything can cause cough. So having something okay in a thinking process will help you to reach diagnosis for a cough. So as Suresh said, so anything beyond 4 weeks, you should think about chronic cough. There's some evidence to say what is called chronic cough. So beyond 4 weeks, definitely you should think about chronic cough and start evaluating further. So if you see in adults, COPD, bronchitis, or gastrointestinal reflux disease and post-nasal are the most common cause of chronic cough in them. So, but in children, most of the time it's a post-viral infection. Usually it will settle down 2 to 3 weeks, but it may go on for weeks. Protected bacterial bronchitis is another differential diagnosis which they commonly see. And the third thing is foreign body in India, right? So when you see the cough is either wet or dry, or you should also ask for specific cough, like is a specific cough, this is non-specific cough. I'll come to it later. Okay, right. So as I said, the most common cause of cough in children is viral infection. So if you see in your practice, a child can come to your clinic with a upper respiratory tract infection almost 8 times a year. And if you see 50% of all are asymptomatic by the day 10, but nearly 10% of children will be symptomatic for the day 25, but rarely beyond that point of time. And most of the children are healthy and the examination is normal. So if your child is healthy and most of the examinations are normal and the cough is lasting for more than 25 days, you can still wait and watch because it is simple post-viral infection. So if it no other findings, so the child is thriving well, is doing well, there's no examination is normal, it's most of the viral infection in a chronic cough. But when should you think about it's not a viral infection, it's something else, and this acute cough is progressing to chronic cough? For example, there is a sudden onset of cough with or without history of choking. So anything sudden onset, you should worry about it. Atypical course with progressive worsening. As Suresh showed the graph, which is a progressive cough, or the cough comes and goes in between. So it's an atypical presentation, which is not as classical as viral cough, which actually shows, which goes up and then slowly comes down. Then you should worry about this acute cough may progress to chronic cough. Someone having hemoptysis, definitely you should think about a chronic cough. Persistent fever with tachypnea and crackles. So we don't need to talk about it. We all know that anything which is persistent fever, definitely there is problem in it. And paroxysmal cough. So all these points Suresh discussed, but I thought of highlighting them again. Right. So in recently there was an evidence which was released into like in the March 2020 by Chan. She is an Australian, Annie Chan is an Australian Brisbane doctor who works more on cough, and along with a cough panel, they published this report. And they said more in child who is having cough, and there should be an algorithmic approach that, rather than going haywire. It's better to have an algorithmic approach so that we don't miss anything, right? So I thought of discussing this algorithm approach. So there's something called cough pointers. Whenever you see a child with having chronic cough, you should look for cough pointers. So what are cough pointers? The specific symptoms you should ask for and should remember them, like someone having chest pain, history suggestive of inhaled foreign body like choking episode if you ask detailed history, someone having dyspnea or exceptional dyspnea, hemoptysis, failure to thrive, feeding difficulties, someone having cardiac or neurodevelopmental abnormalities, recurrent silent infections, or immunodeficiencies, or risk factor for exposure to tuberculosis. There's some cough pointers. You can easily identify them in history. If you find any of this in history in the first presentation when the child presents with a cough, definitely you should think this child will progress for chronic cough. Treating early is better than delaying the treatment. Okay, right. What are the signs? Someone having respiratory distress, digital clubbing, chest wall deformity, or respiratory crackles. Then you should definitely think about a child going for chronic cough. So whenever you see a child coming with recurrent complaints with the cough, or the cough is lasting for many days, take your time to examine in detail. So starting from the nostrils, you should examine the nostrils. You see for nasal discharge, they can have rhinosinusitis, and which can cause to have recurrent cough. You should examine the throat and tonsils. Ask for snoring in the night or for adenoid hypertrophy. Open the chest, look for chest wall deformities if you have. Turn them back, look at the spine, and do a systematic examination what we have been taught in MBBS. So only when you do that examination and take a detailed history, you will arrive at a diagnosis and you treat better. Once you can't, once you've done the history, you can do some preliminary examination like chest X-ray, and lung function test will definitely help you in certain conditions. So as Suresh said, cough characteristic, someone's having barking or a brassy cough, definitely is a group or tracheobronchomalacia, or it can be a habit cough, and it's very easy to diagnose. It's like barking. It's a different cough. It will be louder than this, higher pitch than this, and it arises from deeper inside. And when you hear this cough, it's very easy to think, okay, some have group. Group you usually know it is an infancy, or like in the first 2 to 3 years they have this group, and followed by like predominantly by viral infections, the coryza, they can have group, and it's very easy to diagnose them. Tracheobronchomalacia, it usually starts in infancy. Some kids who've been presented with recurrent respiratory tract infections, and they have this brassy cough, and someone treated for wheezing. Usually if you use salbutamol or any other nebulization, actually this tracheobronchomalacia worsens, the cough worsens. They pull a lot of secretions in them, and they also have failure to thrive. So if you're doing the early bronchoscopy, will help them. And habit cough, it's very well defined by Suresh. So this other thing is CAST, a productive cough, which is usually plastic bronchitis, which is seen in some cardiac, like post-cardiac surgeries and children with having cardiac failures. And honking cough, usually a tick and psychogenic cough. This is the like rare cough characteristic which you definitely should hear and ask the child to cough in your clinic. If he's coughing, take some think about what type of cough it is. So come to a reasonable diagnosis. If it's wet cough or if it's a dry cough. If it's wet cough, definitely you think there's a lot of variations seen in this bronchus. If it's dry cough, this is some cough characteristic where you can think about some causes. So that is paroxysmal cough, which can be pertussis, parapertussis, mycoplasma, adenoviruses. As Suresh said, we often see pertussis kind of a cough in children. And one of the, if your child is having cough and apnea, then definitely should think about pertussis. So though we are vaccinating children, but like infancy, the vaccination is not yet complete. They're still in the primary immunization phase, and their vaccination is not complete. The antibodies what they have are not sufficient for them to protect. And as we know, adults, because we are not, most of the adults, the immunity is actually waning off, and they are reasons why these children having cough. They spread this pertussis, and they may not have all the classical presentation of pertussis, but as Suresh said, the cough which starts coryza and is acute cough which keeps on going, and peripheral smear shows lymphocytosis, then you definitely should think of pertussis. So these children should be identified in catarrhal phase in the first 2 weeks and given antibiotics. If the antibiotics are delayed beyond 2 weeks, no matter whatever you do after that, it will not work. So the clinching diagnosis, we should diagnose them to have like a pertussis cough in the first 2 weeks. So if you see what Suresh presented, so lymphocytosis, a younger age group presenting with cough and has some coryza kind of features, then the fever which is there may or may not be there, then you should think about pertussis and you should start antibiotics in the first 2 weeks itself. If delaying that will not help them. Cough slowly disappears in the conversation. It may take 2 or 3 months for sometimes the cough to go away. It just requires reassurances and nothing other than will work. Just some hydration. That's the only thing which works in pertussis. Right. So metric. We often like pediatricians, most of the pediatricians may not be aware what are the reasons why you use spirometry. This spirometry has very good advantages in children. One of the commonest reasons why being referred to a pulmonologist is they think the child has cough variant of asthma. So sometimes we can stimulate wheezing, like, or induce wheezing in them, like an exercise challenge test. We can ask them to run on a treadmill and then do spirometry. Or if we don't have a treadmill, we sometimes ask them to walk faster and repeat spirometry, and we can see this change in after exercise. They can have bronchospasm and then FEV1 drops, and after then once post bronchodilator response, they can see again increase in the FEV1. And we can think of asthma in this case, and someone having tracheomalacia or vocal cord dysplasia, we can see the flattening of the inspiratory curve also. So spirometry definitely helps us in diagnosing asthma and some kind of airway anomalies. It definitely helps. It's a non-invasive test, very easy to be done in children more than 5 years if they are cooperative. So cough variant of asthma, when you suspect, and very well presented, again atopy in the family where excessive wheezing, rapid response to asthma medication, you think of cough variant of asthma. Now, this is an algorithm which I thought of bringing up, which is presented by Annie. So any child who is less than 14 years and the cough lasts for more than 4 weeks duration, when you're coming to your clinic, so specific cough pointers as I mentioned. So you should look for specific how the history, go to the history and ask in detail, look for cardiac problems, look for neurological problems if the child has, ask detailed history when the cough started, how it progresses, have a like visual mapping on your like what you call in your letterhead how the cough is. If you go through history, definitely you find one of the reasons for cough. And second, you should look for the cough characteristic. If the child is coughing, listen to it. Third is radiograph, and the fourth is spirometry. When you have done all this, and if you can find abnormality, go the pathology, go ahead and treat. If you can't pathology, then go to the next step. So if you can't find a pathology, there's no cough pointers, the cough child is still coughing, ask for tobacco smoking, and tobacco smoking and where they live. If there's environmental exposure, ask them to stop tobacco, or if they live in a dusty place, ask them to a different place. If that makes an improvement, definitely the child is probably exposed to some dust, right? And if you still can't find the reason, the child is having non-specific cough, which is dry cough, and there's no cough pointers, we go to the next step. So most of the time we can see this non-specific cough, which is dry cough and no cough pointers. So after evaluating, like if the cough is only during daytime and not in the nighttime, as Suresh presented one of the case, it can be habitual cough or tick cough. It just requires counseling, breathing exercise, and rarely we give dextromethorphan for them to stop this coughing in the daytime. But it usually takes multiple visits for them to cough to stop. So we watch and wait and review the child. Usually post-viral coughs or acute bronchitis is one of the common causes of dry cough, which usually settles by its own. We give them honey, which usually helps them to soothe their receptors in the throat, and they usually do well with it. Rarely, but we examine for foreign body, inhalation, asthma, upper airway disorders, and like this is a differential diagnosis what we can think of. And ask them to review after 2 weeks. Even if review after 2 weeks, the cough persists, then we'll discuss the options with the parents. Either we can wait and watch if it's dry cough, or the child should be thriving well. There is no other thing other than the dry cough or the child has. Okay, so we have evaluated for the cough pointers like failure to thrive, aspiration history, of cardiac problems, neurological problems, and all that cough pointers you have taken off, you have investigated, chest X-ray is normal, your spirometry is also normal, it's not asthma, and the cough is still persisting despite you waiting for like almost 2 to 3 weeks. Then there are 2 options. You can wait and watch, review after 2 weeks, or you can give a trial of inhaled corticosteroids. So you can give budesonide equivalent of 400 micrograms and review of the child in 2 to 4 weeks. If the cough subsides, then it can be a transient response to inhaled corticosteroids, or it can be a cough variant of asthma. Or the cough, you wait and watch, the cough is still persisting. Then again, sometimes what happens in the initial first presentation of cough, you may not have all the cough pointers, the child will be normal. But on subsequent examination, you may see the child may have new onset of crackles, or the X-ray may show some abnormalities, or the child may have new symptoms. At that point of a time, you again go back and see what is the abnormality and try to reason what is the cause for this cough. So if you can't find it, now you have started inhaling corticosteroids. If there's a response, review in 2 to 4 weeks. If there's a good response, it can be asthma or it can be just a transient response. If there's no asthma, again, so you're missing something in your history. You have to go back to your history and go through your history, look for the cough pointers. So what are the cough? So you have to go back to cough pointers. Again, it's a dry cough, symptoms and signs of asthma, it should be irreversible airway disease. If it is not a dry cough, is a wet cough, at that point of time you're looking again, it can be a wet cough. If it's wet cough, look for other cough pointers. If there are cough pointers, we'll go other wells. But if it's a wet cough in a child who is presenting, even after 4 weeks, you have waited for sufficient time and the cough is still presenting. If it's wet cough, you think of protracted bacterial bronchitis. Here, if it's a dry cough, it can be asthma or it can be just a habit cough, or it can be just transient response to inhaled corticosteroids. It can be some bronchitis, which is not actually wet as of now. But if you have wet cough, it can be protracted bacterial bronchitis. So what is protracted bacterial bronchitis? Children usually after some viral infection or upper respiratory tract infection, they have this bronchitis which may last for like more than 4 weeks, and they have this wet cough. And this is, most of the kids in the past were treated for tuberculosis thinking they have wet cough. But these children, how do you diagnose them? So children have isolated wet cough. There are no symptoms or signs of any other cause. Chest X-ray is normal. There's no radiological abnormality, no consolidation anywhere in the chest, and they respond to 2 weeks course of antibiotics. So you give them amoxiclav for 2 weeks. If no response, you give for 2 more weeks. Total 4 weeks you give them. And most of the children respond to protective antibiotics and then do well in protective bacterial bronchitis. So the take-home message is, if you see any child who is having wet cough and which is going more than 4 weeks, and you have waited for sufficient point of a time without treating it with any other antibiotics, if you're given a short duration of antibiotics for 7 days, it does not help, and the child is still having cough, and the X-ray examination is normal, there's no other cough pointers, the wet cough is persisting, then you think of protracted bacterial bronchitis. So you should give antibiotics for 2 weeks. So most of the pneumonias or upper respiratory infection, we treat them for a week time. But in protracted bacterial bronchitis, you should treat it at least for 2 weeks. If no response, you treat for 2 more weeks. Sometimes if you still don't have a response, we do flexible bronchoscopy, do a culture, and give what our organism is doing, and we have to give specific antibiotic for this to disappear. Right. So as I said, what are the cough pointers? Like if it's not protected bacterial bronchitis, and you can go through this cough pointers in the article, like it says, like cardiac abnormalities, chest pain, you think of arrhythmias, choking, a foreign body, chest wall deformity, any other airway anomalies, digital clubbing, can be superior lung disease. This history, which we all learned during MBBS, and is always available to read. Okay, right. So there's no response to asthma medication, and if it's not protected bacterial bronchitis, if it's dry cough, you try inhaled corticosteroids and there's no response, or it's a wet cough, you try 2 weeks of antibiotics, if there's no response to it, you try 2 more weeks, there's no response, you did a bronchoscopy, you didn't find any foreign body, and you just do a culture, you found some organism, you treated it. If you didn't find any organisms, it's still clear, and the cough is still persisting, then you go for this. So it can be bronchiectasis or recurrent pneumonia. Okay, it can be aspiration with chronic or less common infection. It can be interstitial lung disease, airway abnormalities, other less common cause. So let me give some examples for these causes. Like this child who presented with this 8 years old child who was having recurrent cough, and it was same area, he was same area of consolidation. So every time he goes to different pediatrician gives him an antibiotic, he does well, and then after 1 or 2 months he has cough again. So he goes to different pediatrician, they treat him with the antibiotic, he does well. So finally he ended up with one in medical college where they did a HRCT, and they found to have bronchiectasis, changes in this right lower lobe. So, and the same visit he also had hemoptysis. So doctor they referred for lobectomy, saying that there's a bronchiectasis and you're having hemoptysis, was referred for bronchiectasis, so for lobectomy, sorry. So when he came here with hemoptysis and for lobectomy, so before going for lobectomy, we thought of doing a bronchoscopy. When we did bronchoscopy, there's a thick mucus plug kind of a thing sitting in his right main bronchus, and when we tried to remove all this granulation tissue, actually it was a nut which was like a peanut which was sitting there, which was actually eaten up by the neutrophils and everything. It was not classically looking like nut, but there's a lot of granulation tissue. We clear the granulation tissue, and once we clear the granulation, a lot of pus sitting behind. We gave him, we just doing Pseudomonas there, and once we treated with antibiotics for 4 weeks, he became absolutely normal. The cases where you should think when you should see cough pointers like choking episodes or recurrent like pulmonary infiltrates. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. This second case, like this is one more 8 years old child who came with recurrent nasal discharge, otitis media. He came with a failure to thrive and wheezing. So if you see his X-ray PNS, so CT scan PNS, there is sinusitis, right? His both maxillary are not seen, and he was having kind of a hyperinflated chest. And if you see his X-ray, it's kind of a more of hyperinflated chest. So this was a child of a primary ciliary dyskinesia, so who can have recurrent sinopulmonary discharges and wheezing. So this child usually, the X-ray may be looking normal, but the clue is recurrent sinus discharge and hyperinflated chest with failure to thrive. So this was one of the child who presented with recurrent pneumonias. So we sent for electron microscopy, and we found a primary ciliary dyskinesia. So he was treated with multiple antibiotics whenever infection, some lung clearance technique, which causes active cycle of breathing, hypertonic saline nebulizations, and eventually is doing well. So what are the clues to diagnose primary ciliary dyskinesia? One is a child who's having recurrent sinopulmonary discharges and recurrent pneumonias, X-ray showing bilateral hyperinflated chest. And if you have situs inversus as a total inversus, then you can definitely suspect someone having primary ciliary dyskinesia. If you see situs inversus in any child and having recurrent infection, probably they have primary ciliary dyskinesia, and they require specific treatment for lung clearing mechanism of chest physiotherapy. We do something called PEP therapy to them, and they eventually they have a decent life if we do them. If we don't identify and treat them, the lung function progressively worsens. And last week we had a child who had a primary ciliary dyskinesia. He was missed, and eventually he had recurrent like lung ventricular bronchiectasis, and he was saturating of 70%, and he had actually recently COVID infection. Following COVID infection, he died. Right? So I think that this is very early is much important. So always look for cough pointers in them. So this other case, like this is 2 years old child who had a pneumonia. Following the pneumonia, was treated with antibiotics, and child was doing well and was sent home. But the child was persistently having wheezing. The doctor gave him nebulizations, but nothing was working. The child came with after 4 months with no gain in weight, persistent wheezing, a loss of almost 2.5 kilos of child. The child was referred to me to evaluate further. So look at the X-ray. It was kind of bilateral infiltrates were there, some areas of hyperinflation. We did a CT chest, and if you see the CT chest, there are multiple areas of consolidation, and then in between the consolidation, there's a hyperinflated area. It's kind of a mosaic pattern. So mosaic flooring kind of a thing. You have different tiles of different areas, like the consolidation, hyperinflation. It's kind of a called cryptogenic organizing pneumonia. Earlier it was called bronchiolitis obliterans pneumonia. So basically these areas are blocked with a lot of thick secretions, and the airways are not actually opening up the thick secretions. The airway gets trapped and have multiple consolidations. So she was actually, when she came, she was oxygen independent. So we gave him a pulse methylprednisolone, and following that, the child improved, and then put him on prednisone for 2 or 3 weeks, then changed to hydroxychloroquine and with some antibiotics. And she's doing well. She put up weight. There's no wheezing at all, and eventually, the child is doing well with just some hydroxychloroquine and tapering with taper steroids and off. Now she's just on hydroxychloroquine. No hospital visits in the last 6 months, though the COVID season, winter months. She's still doing well and thriving well. Okay, so whenever you see a X-ray abnormality which is persisting, so you should always think about, even though the child was doing well and there's nothing in the past, a persistent pneumonia or a progressing pneumonia in a child after for first round pneumonia, you should always think of tuberculosis first, which is not responding, and you should also think of cryptogenic organizing pneumonia. Right. So this is a child. If you see, there's a hyperlucency of the child on the right side compared to the left side. So though there is nothing kind of consolidation in the X-ray, but this child actually had a corn in his like in right main bronchus, which was eventually removed. So the X-ray was normal, but this child had some kind of a pitchy sound, like monophonic. It's not very wheezy, but kind of abnormal sound which you can hear in the right main bronchus. When we flexible bronchoscopy, we found actually he was eating a popcorn 2 days back, and he has aspirated the popcorn, and then we removed the corn. The child was symptomatically better. So the other cases, like this Suresh presented someone who having a wheezing, and which is not responding, cough with wheezing, and which is not responding to inhale, like if you nebulization steroids you give and the child is still having wheezing, you should think about allergic pulmonary aspergillosis. One of the thing, it can be like, or you can say it's resistant asthma. Someone who's you're treating with asthma, but they're not responding for asthma, you should think about pulmonary aspergillosis. So you can do serum IgE levels, which if the serum IgE levels are more than 1000, or specific IgE levels which are higher than 3.4 for the range what we see, and here they have eosinophilia, then you can think of pulmonary aspergillosis. If you do a CT, they can have nodules in the lung, which you can see here, some of nodules in the lung, and if you treat them with prednisolone for alternate days for 6 weeks, and then slowly taper off, put them on itraconazole for 6 months, they eventually do well. This child is on follow-up, and the wheezing has completely subsided, and the child is on tapering road. We also evaluate cystic fibrosis. Whenever you see a child with pulmonary aspergillosis, you should think about cystic fibrosis, because most of the kids with cystic fibrosis end up with having pulmonary aspergillosis. And definitely in India, we should never forget about tuberculosis in the child who has chronic cough may respond to trial of antibiotics if the child has secondary infection. So always think, if the child has tuberculosis and it is causing some bronchial obstruction because of lymphadenopathy, they may respond to a trial of antibiotics, because they may also have secondary infection. But again, the cough will come back, the fever will come back. If you do a bronchoscopy, do a gastric lavage, you may still, or MANTO, you may be able to identify tuberculosis in them. So just definitely ask for history of contact, high ESR, MANTO, or primary focus in children with no other diagnosis. AT can be started on induced sputum or after giving gastric lavage. Definitely CBNAT is very useful. In the last few years, it is helping us to diagnose a lot of tuberculosis in the children. Right. And not the least, airway anomalies always has to be looked at. This is a normal airway, and this is an airway with a tracheobronchiomalacia. So whenever someone is having cough, usually in the infancy and the first 2 years, someone having Brazil cough, you should always think about airway anomalies. And if they have tracheobronchiomalacia, definitely the cough, they'll pull up a lot of secretions. They have wheezing, and they will present with like wheezing and recurrent pneumonias, and should always think of airway anomalies and ask for a bronchoscopy in them. And never forget about congenital heart disease, a ventricular septal defect in the children, and who can always have, like this child who presents with pneumonia with a cardiomegaly, or in X-ray if you see cardiomegaly and aspirate if you feel a murmur, definitely there's a cause of pneumonia, and you should treat the, like once the pneumonia subsides, you should refer to cardiologist to get it sorted out. And any child who has failure to thrive in a children who has recurrent pneumonias, and you can do what you can do is the chest X-ray showing multiple consolidations. You should suspect in cystic fibrosis. In the last 3 to 4 years, what I'm practicing in India, I've seen around 6 cystic fibrosis in children. So what you can do if you think of cystic fibrosis is called aquagenic wrinkling test. Normally, most of our hand usually wrinkles after 3 minutes when you keep your hand in the water. So your hand wrinkles usually at the end of 3 minutes. In children with cystic fibrosis, the wrinkling starts very early. Even in the first minute, you can see wrinkling. So one of the easiest way to diagnose cystic fibrosis or suspect cystic fibrosis is called aquagenic wrinkling. Just dip the child's hands in the water, and if you see the child has wrinkling very early in the first 1 or 2 minutes, then you can think of cystic fibrosis. There are centers which do sweat chloride test. Once you do sweat chloride test, and if the chloride levels are more than 60, definitely confirm cystic fibrosis. And if you decide cystic fibrosis, then once you refer to a center who manages cystic fibrosis, their life, like the way they do is really good. So the child who came back to me 6 days back with cystic fibrosis, he is now 7 years old child, so well managed child, and is doing exceptionally well now. Okay. In summary, most of our cause is post-viral bronchitis, which requires no treatment at all. So you should always ask for smoking exposure, and that's the second most common cause of having cough. If there's no cough and you can't find any cough pointers, reassure the parents to reduce their anxiety. Honey alone is approved for treating acute cough. No OTC drugs have evidence. Don't forget to ask for history of choking. And when you're thinking about a cough which is progressing, do a focus examination, do a thorough examination. You can do basic examination, chest X-ray and spirometry. If you still can't find a cause, if it's a wet cough, think of protracted bacterial bronchitis. If there's no other cough pointers and there is a wet cough which is persisting beyond 4 weeks, think of protracted bacterial bronchitis. Give a trial of amoxicillin for 2 weeks. If not responding, 2 more weeks. If no response, you can do bronchoscopy, look for anomalies of foreign body or the organism. If cough pointers are present, do detailed evaluation and treat before lung function worsens. Once the lung function worsens, most of us can't do anything. If asthma medications are started empirically, define the duration. Stop in between, see if the symptoms was like come back. If it comes back, probably it's asthma. Do spirometry if the age permits. Don't just continue inhale corticosteroids without thinking of like without confirming asthma. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
So very nicely done, Raghu. Raghuvanshi did a good job.
Thank you.
So it was presentation was
very good.
very tough topic. You did in a concise way actually. Very nicely presented. Good job.
Yeah.
That's,
Thank you,
that's
Suresh.
true,
Most
Suresh.
of the work was
Both
done
of
by
you done
you.
a very
I
good
just
job.
had to reassure.
So there are a few questions for both of you. Before that, next week we are doing a webinar on birth asphyxia, both acute management by neonatologist and management when to involve neurologist and what is the long-term prognosis by the neurologist. So few questions. One question for Dr. Suresh is by Dr. Dilip. How common is the ear problem presenting as chronic cough?
If actually ear problems presenting as chronic cough is possible, but relatively rare if you ask me actually. So ear symptoms will be predominantly earache or ear discharge. Without anything presenting as isolated chronic cough is relatively rare.
Okay. Again, for Dr. Dilip,
The
is there
last
any
4
preference
months
for
back, yeah.
azithromycin and clarithromycin? Pardon, sir. You want to add, Raghu?
Yeah, I think someone asked this question. So it is definitely very rare to find a ear anomalies, but 4 months back we had a child who was putting his pencils in his ear, okay, and was stimulating with the pencil to have cough, and the pencil lid actually stuck in his ear, and the wax around it, and that was actually stimulating him to have cough. So definitely do a ear examination. If you find the impacted wax or foreign body is sticking there, that can actually stimulate the Arnold nerve and cause cough. So definitely any child with chronic cough, you should examine their ears.
Okay. Is there any preference between azithromycin and clarithromycin? Anyone of you can take that one?
There is only for convenience sake, it's a once a day or twice a day you want to give or something like that. Otherwise, choosing the antibiotic, your etiology should be correct. If you think of it's an atypical infection, you can go for any drug, and macrolides can be used as per the availability. There is no recommendations are very clear that there is no major difference.
The duration of azithromycin for pertussis and clarithromycin for pertussis, is there any difference?
I think it's a 5 days.
For clarithromycin, azithromycin both are for 5 days.
I think clarithromycin we give for longer days, but as I said, so we rarely use clarithromycin, and most of our brains are engraved with using azithromycin because it's easy to use. So what I really believe is, yeah.
See, actually, clarithromycin uses very less. If you ask me, even our experience, if you ask me, clarithromycin usage is very less because of availability of syrup forms with azithromycin and usage of one-day drug. We are comfortable with azithromycin. But actually speaking, I don't have experience of using clarithromycin for purposes. So far, whatever patients I have suspected and confirmed, we have used azithromycin. I think there is no major difference in both comparing with azithromycin with clarithromycin.
Okay. Is it worth giving honey-based cough syrups to a child with post-viral cough?
If it's more than 1 year, definitely you can give honey to the children. Yeah, that's only evidence which has showed as of now, which can make it soothes the cough. They have actually the receptors which are in the throat, cough receptors, just kind of creates coating, reduces the dry air touching those receptors and reduces the cough. As of now, if you see evidence, honey is the only thing which works for acute cough in children if you think of post-viral cough. But make sure the child is more than 1 year. If less than 1 year, there is stuff happening botulism.
See, honey wise, there is no. See, if you ask me, I'll tell you very clearly. If you tell to the patient very clearly that no medicines is required, it will become all right. First of all, we have to get convinced. See, this is a practical point I want to tell you. See, we are convinced it will become all right in 2 weeks. We can strongly tell to the patient nothing is required, it will become all right. And if you all will agree with me, most of the parents doesn't want honey or any treatment actually. It is just to satisfy the patient. Actually, if we should be first of all clear, are we missing anything else? If we were missing something and the patient comes back, that's our worry is only one thing is actually like that. No recommendations for giving anything. Honey, as Raghuvamshi is telling, is can be used, nothing wrong in it. It can be used, but if you ask me, I never used honey also for any of my patients. See, we have to always focus. The only point I want to tell you is focus on etiology. Write your diagnosis. See, for example, that is a practical thing which I have learned from my teachers. When you start writing a diagnosis, we will be convinced to write the prescription based on that. So nothing wrong in giving honey, especially after the 1 year, because of the risk of botulism. But we don't document more botulism here. Nothing to worry about it. And studies have shown that some beneficial effect is there with honey also, but there is no randomized controls trials to say as a recommendation to use honey.
Treatment for persistent bronchitis, Raghu, is it for 2 weeks or 4 weeks? Treatment for persistent bacterial for 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
Actually, you can start with 2 weeks. Amoxiclav is the recommended drug to start. If there's no response after 2 weeks of antibiotics, you can give 2 more weeks. Even after 4 weeks, there's no response, and if you don't think there's no other alternate diagnosis, then you can ask for flexible bronchoscopy, ask for culture. You can do for CBNAT in the same smear, and you can look for peripheral like smear of what are the actual cell count in it, ask for culture, and based on the culture, you can decide about the antibiotic again.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Suresh and Dr. Raghu. Both have done a great job presenting your experience here. Thank you one and all for your patient listening. Next week, we'll again meet with another interesting topic, birth asphyxia. Thank you one and all. I'm closing the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, sir.